Welcome to Shakeshero, the podcast that bridges the gap between you and all things Shakespeare. I'm Chloe Baldwin.
I'm Paul Stafford, and today we have our intro episode, and we're trying to define what we're actually trying to do here and, the conversations that we've been having that kind of led into this. And so we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm Paul, and I don't know anything about Shakespeare. I'm more of a layman to this subject matter, but because of knowing Chloe, I'm an avid, viewer and consumer of the art form, and yeah, that's me.
Yeah, you're a layman, but you're not a lame man, just to be clear.
Oh God, it starts now.
It's already starting. So I'm Chloe. I am an actress. I really like Shakespeare, so I sometimes consider myself a Shakespearean actress, but not in the big, formal, frumpy way, in a way that's very present and now, and I'm interested in the ways that we bridge the gap between us and Shakespeare. And I'm a fight choreographer, and I do a couple other things too. Filmmaker now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way you frame that is a lot of the reasons about, a lot of the things we're going to talk about is how the problems you feel with a lot of productions and how they put it on and how they kind of put on airs when they do it. And it's kind of heady, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that. It was very common, everyman, theater for a lot of the average consumer when it was written. That's your argument.
And the thing that when people are maybe interested in it, I think the thing that kind of pushes them away is that people putting Shakespeare on a pedestal or thinking it's fancy or pretentious.
Word. So before we get into that, we're going to talk about just our history of how we met and what led to certain conversations that thought we might share these conversations with other people.
Yeah, it gives us some context.
So now it's 2020. It's March of 2020, and we met in July of 2018.
Yeah.
So in California in Thousand Oaks at a college called Cal Lutheran. I was attending that school at the time.
And I was there being an apprentice for a Shakespeare festival that summer.
So I was getting my degree in computer science, but my side job was to work at the school theater. Mm-hmm. And so the theater company that is hosted there just has a lot of connections with the school, so I got hired as a lighting technician because I have some background in that. But it was very kind of side to me. I didn't really know a lot about it. I was interested, I was open-minded, but it was really just an extra job, and it was cool.
Yeah, summer job.
And then some people came in from out of town, including Chloe.
It was me!
And I found myself viewing the same play over and over because I was also one of the sound technicians. So
you had to watch it every night because you'd be pressing the button that says, okay, next sound, go, next sound, go. So you'd have to watch it over and over again and pay attention so you'd know what was coming next.
Exactly. And so while the play that we first did was Othello, and while the first viewing, obviously the language is a little over my head, but the inflection allows you to get little tidbits in there, and then as the whole thing unfolds, you kind of get who this character was and what they were doing, but it was mostly all beyond me. But by we were running all summer, so by the fourth or fifth show, I got a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Oh, they did that differently tonight. Oh, they did, there's this thing, and it starts to kind of seep in, and then the more the plays went on, and the more I got to know you.
Yeah, and we talked
about it, and I had, this night I had these questions, and this I had these questions, and you were like, I know, they should have done it this way.
Right, and some of the questions that he brought to me, he was like, well, why are they doing this, or I don't understand that, and I was like...
Or why should I care about this thing?
Or why should I care about what they're doing? They seem so dumb. Why are they making these stupid decisions? And I would kind of try to contextualize it and be like, well, if you look at the text, it should this is something that should be brought out more, because, this is the intention behind this character. This is what's driving them. So, maybe if this production had brought those things out more, maybe that would make it more understandable. It would make it more visceral and able to be related to more. And so we talked about that, and we were like, and one of the things you asked me was well, what about a production of Shakespeare that's really good? Have you seen a production that hit all of those things? Because it's a lot of things.
Yeah, I want to get there, but I want to talk about a couple more things. But yeah, So for something, for example, for something like Othello, there would be a setting issue, and all the actors would be reacting to something or talking about this subject and be super emotional about it, but I wasn't getting that as a layman viewer, as someone who didn't know what history or time period is in, because there wasn't a real attempt to
make the rules of the world
exactly
known.
to bring that context to me. And so that's something that we've been talking about recently is how what is the responsibility of the artist to bring the art to the audience, and what's the responsibility of the audience to bring it to the art? Because, as like you go to a museum and you see paintings, and if you ever been to a museum and you walked around with with like the little audio guide where you get to a painting.
That's me. I'm the audio guide.
Where you get to a painting and you see and the audio guide gives you like, this artist was going through this and they're trying to convey this in this political era, and these are what this represent.
Shouldn't the painting just tell you that? Maybe or not? Or like, how much of that do you need?
Exactly.
It's the question we've been grappling with.
And the medium matters a lot. Like a painting is hard, so like you kind of do need that.
Yeah.
Like, but theater, I would imagine, or like should become, to me, a little bit more, should tell me why, if you want it to be timeless.
Right.
Which maybe you don't. Maybe it is like of a time and a place, and if you're trying to do that, in your argument is Shakespeare is timeless. But so that's just something that it's kind of.
I don't know. Is that my argument? I think in general, but like we gotta pin it down.
So, yeah, exactly. So that's why it's a podcast worth of conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like 8,000 rabbit trails we could have just gone down there.
Exactly.
Rabbit holes? I don't know.
So to get back to what you were about to say about me and Chloe, I was picking apart like a Shakespeare production we were talking about, and I was saying, well, I've seen this production. I didn't like that one either, and I was trying to like kind of have some kind of grounding in like what I thought was good art and good theater. I'm like, I am totally open to liking something, but I'm not going to like Shakespeare just because everybody thinks it's supposed to be good, and I'm not going to say that something is good because like it's just what is the general agreed upon thing.
And I agree with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and you were trying to come at a place of, I've read this text, I've seen different productions of this play, and you thought it was a good play from the source, but I was picking apart this one production.
Right, exactly. That's the thing that's one of the things I want to say is that I feel like some people have like seen a production of a Shakespearean play, be it Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, whatever, and they're like, well, I hate Hamlet, or I hate Romeo and Juliet. And I'm like, maybe you don't. Maybe you just hate that production. Or if you've read it, it's like, but it's kind of the opposite problem if you've read it, because you're like, I'm just looking at all these words on a page because it's meant to be performed. So what you really have to do is see a really good production of Shakespeare sometimes in order to connect with it. So so how do we do that? How do we help everybody see the nuances of the story? Can we do that through this podcast? Can we do that through good productions? I don't know. I want to find out.
Yeah, so that's our reason for like picking apart this. We're not sure if it's going to be analyzing plays specifically, because every production can be different. That's the point. You may have seen, so for this podcast might be you if you're a person who's seen a production of Shakespeare that you didn't get at all, that you didn't really like, but in Chloe's mind, and depending on the play, in my mind, there is a version of that you would have loved and could have hit you really hard.
Totally.
But it just remains to either fill in the missing context for you, or have a production that is just more like does a better job of bridging that gap.
Absolutely.
And so that's what you're saying is that we need to do. And so in this role, like I am supposed to be the layman person who's the eyes of my side of the audience who don't really know a lot about Shakespeare, but could benefit from some context.
Yeah, and that's why it's great to hear from you so much, especially in this intro, because it's like if I were to sit here and be like, listen, Shakespeare's so great, like, everybody would tune out immediately.
So that's kind of what we thought we could, bring to this. So we met in 2018, and we've since become lovers, and we moved to get together.
Yes,
so
we're dating. We live in the same house.
So all of these conversations that led to this final, like, oh yeah, we still never like talked about that one point. So
we should talk about that.
So we talked about like, okay, so is it the production or is it the actual play that's the problem, and which one and what you should cut out? And then we kept arguing about it, and we had this one long argument in one night where I, again, was critiquing this production, and she's like, no, it's good because of this. I'm like, I don't care what I should have known about it. They didn't tell me, so it's not good. And then it occurred to me, I was like, okay, wait a minute. How many good productions of Shakespeare have you seen in your life? By the way, she's seen hundreds.
So many. Like, and great. I think the word you used was great.
How many great, like, all encompassing.
Like ones that you felt like really conveyed the story and really were doing the thing you're talking about.
And your answer was?
Less than 5.
Yeah. Which was a huge realization for our and an important like metric for our conversations and how we talk about it. And when and the room I need to leave for what's possible when we talk about a production that we just saw.
Absolutely.
And so ideally for this podcast, we can watch a production, and then I can have a lot of questions, and Chloe can break that down, and we can decide, and like, was it a good production? I don't know if we're gonna like start shitting on productions that we see. Yeah. but we can like help bridge the gap, which is the whole point.
Exactly.
Like help, it like give you something to think about the time period at least of
right.
like why Othello is so has PTSD because he's just been through the war, and like he in this entire culture of people where status is everything. Status is the best currency. Mm-hmm. It's not like today, and we can't imagine it like today. But it's important to think about those things to at least because Shakespeare's not going to change. The text is the text. That art isn't going to come any closer to us.
Right.
But you're saying that there's a lot to be gained, and there's a lot of relevance that it still has if we can come to it a little bit. Totally.
And I think too, I think that's worth thinking about whether, you're a director, whether you're an audience member, whether you're a person like totally outside of it, if you're an audience member, or if you're literally just coming at it from the outside and you've never experienced Shakespeare before for some reason.
Yeah.
You still have to think about like, how can I set this up for myself in terms of like, what is the gameplay? Like, what are the rules of this world? And you have to think about that. Ideally, if you're a director and you're walking into it and being like, how do I set up the rules of this world for the audience? But if you're an audience member walking into it, and maybe it's not the perfect Shakespearean production, maybe it's a high school production, or maybe it's like people still learning.
Maybe you don't have the budget to have a great set, but you need to like maybe you just need to use what you have. Cut an entire scene.
Absolutely.
And like maybe it doesn't need to be so precious. You don't have to be like a historical purist about it, but
right.
maybe like some people will disagree.
Regardless of what you do, if it's a pared down production or if it's big, what you still need to do either for yourself as an audience member, for yourself as an actor, or hopefully if you're a director or producer, really set up the rules of the world for the audience. So, if you're doing Othello, somehow you need to communicate to the audience as like at game start and in the beginning of the play, his PTSD or his status in this society and how important that is. Like whether it's through costumes, whether it's through acting choices and staging, like it just needs to be crystallized and clearly communicated in order for the rest of the play and the fallout that happens to make any sense. Like for those, you're kind of setting up walls around your character that mean that the only direction for them to go is in that one direction. Yeah. And even if it's a tragedy, that's the only way that they can go based on their given circumstances.
It needs to make sense to us.
Yeah, like otherwise it's like, why would they do that? They're dumb.
Exactly. Like while there's so much room for opinion and like weighing of different aspects of the play before you like consider it good, like which metric do you use?
Yes.
But
there are better and worse Shakespeare plays too. I would also like to say that. He's not a perfect playwright. Yeah. None of us are perfect artists. For sure, yeah. But it's a really good metric to use for something that is I don't know. It's so steep. Our culture is so steeped in it. It's what part of the seeds. It's part of the trunk of our tree that became Western society, even Eastern. Like it's just so seeped into our. So many tropes are based on it. We have so many like linguistic things that came out of it, like phrases, new words. But it also is like a famous and infamous for people that have come across it. Yes. So like it's probably the best example and the best. A use case to answer the question, how far should art come to you and how far do you need to come to it? Use case. I like that. I've never heard that before. Science, yeah, look at you. Who is he? So anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. It was about Othello, but anyway, I think we're getting close to covering what we were talking about. Yeah, I think so. I think paint the picture of what we're trying to do. This kind of gives the general swath of what we're interested in, what we want to share. Yeah, so I mean, if I was anything, I would. What we hope to accomplish with this is, at least for what I hope to accomplish for me, which would be, this would be nice to listen to if I had just seen a production or if I was about to see a production. Yeah. Or like, because we can't like review, we're not sure if we're going to like review a production, but we're going to talk about ones we've seen and talking about what we liked and didn't like about it. Yeah, I think personally I would definitely stay away from the word, in my own mind, and however you want to describe it for yourself is great, but review, I feel like that's not what it is. I feel barely qualified to even talk about it. No, but I feel like like it's good to use these as case studies to be like, oh, this thing really worked with this, and I feel like this is interesting to me, and this helped bridge that gap. Or like this, I feel like I wish they brought that out more. I feel like that would have helped us. Or like, oh, this just feels like it's caught up in its own pretentiousness, Shakespeare up its own butt kind of thing.
Exactly. So, but I guess what I remember what I was gonna say now. I remember getting at that summer where I saw where I was the op on Othello, so I saw it 9 times. By the 9th time, I thought I had gotten enough to like really enjoy it and think about all these different aspects.
Yeah.
But I wish I had. But it shouldn't have taken 9 times if I would have known the right things before. Totally. And so if I had watched something, even like your mom reads the Wikipedia articles, I think that's so smart. Which is like gives you a context. So I'm not like fighting to get through it. Right. Like I am enjoying it, and I'm like waiting for what comes next because I have enough context. Absolutely. And so. Yeah, that's what I would hope that this would accomplish that for past me.
Yeah, I think for me the 2 main things are like, why should we care? Like, why should I care about these stories? And also like kind of mining in the stories what is important and figuring out like what's important about this story in general. And then, obviously different productions will bring out different things, and different things are important to different people. But I think, kind of just at least taking a first stab at like, these are the things that pop out to us as things that are important and that we think should be pinged if you're doing a production of this or if you're seeing a production of this. Yeah. So.
While, again, other thing that I was going to say that too, like there's a lot of things, a lot of room for opinion and things like that, but there's certain core things for storytelling that are universally important and kind of impossible to argue against. Those are the things that I feel qualified to talk about, and that I will try to focus on as opposed to like picking apart somebody else's attempt.
Yeah, I don't want to pick apart other people's attempt, but I want to focus on the storytelling pillars, or however you want to describe them.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, I think we did everything I think we talked about everything we need to talk about. So.
Yeah, me too.
That was episode 1. That's who we are, and that's what we want to do. So I guess we'll see you in episode 2.
Yeah, stay tuned. Hope to talk to you guys soon.
Cool.